Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Threat Intelligence from Symantec Endpoint Security Complete webinar. That is a mouthful. I'm here with Adam Licata. Adam, I got a question for you.
Sure.
I have said that threat intelligence is like military intelligence, a contradiction in terms. You've got 45 minutes. Do you think you can convince me otherwise?
I think I can convince you in 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Well, folks,
10
this
minutes.
is going to be a
It's going to be a really quick webinar. Yeah.
All right, good. Well, we're going to give you a lot of time back in your day. Okay, so before we get started, I am contractually obligated to do housekeeping slides. So for everybody joining us, have never used BrightTalk before or just need a refresher, let me step you through that. If you want to ask a question, you can ask at any time. I'll monitor it during the talk. Adam, if I'm not making eye contact, I am listening. I'm looking at the questions. We'll definitely get to them at the end. If we can't get to everything, we'll follow up afterwards. Again, standard procedure. We have put a few attachments in there, so hopefully those are things that you'll find useful. Let's see. You get a chance to rate us, and we hope you do. You let us know how we're doing. Add your comments and suggestions so we can make it better. And I'll remind you again at the end of the webinar. And you will have the opportunity to vote. There will be poll questions, and that will pop up, and we'll get a sense of where you are and what you're interested in, what you're doing from that. With that, I think we're ready to go. And you know what? Let's actually start with a poll question. And this is a chance for everybody to contradict me, tell me I was wrong in terms of what they think about threat intelligence. So I have put the poll up. If anyone has an opinion, let us know about threat intelligence. Do you think it exceeds your expectation, what you're using? Does it meet your expectations? Does it not? Or you just don't use threat intelligence? Anybody let us know there. And then we'll take that information and we'll get going with the presentation. Look at this. I am wrong, completely wrong. People are voting that it does exceed their expectations. I got a feeling these are people that have had a chance to use our threat intelligence, Adam. No,
definitely. Yeah, exclusively, for sure.
Exclusively. Okay, cool. Good. Okay. And there are a lot of people, not surprising, some people are saying they don't use threat intelligence at all. It just probably doesn't fit into their routine. Well, certainly if you've got comments on the threat intelligence, throw them into the Q&A. The numbers are continuing to go. Meet expectations, also to be expected. Our customers are pretty clear-eyed. They go in, they look at something, they don't buy it till they know what they're getting. Right. So I think this is going to be a chance for us to let folks know what they're getting with the threat intelligence offering we have. I'm going to end the poll here. I appreciate everybody participating. And Adam, I'm going to stick up the slide for the agenda. And when you're ready to move on, you just tell me. But I'm going to hand it over to you at this point.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. All right. So we're going to get into some of the use cases as to, what value can you get out of threat intelligence, with the understanding that, threat intelligence is kind of across a whole spectrum of things, right? It can mean many things to many people and be used in many different ways. And so we'll be talking about a couple different types of threat intelligence, how you can use it, what value you can get out of it. I'll also give you some real-world examples. We'll use the recent SolarWinds attack with some Sunburst malware samples, so you can see what type of intelligence you can get out of that, get out of Endpoint Security Complete with using those as our examples. We'll also be talking about the integration of intelligence. It's one thing to have access to some really interesting information about threats. It's a completely different thing in operationalizing that and making it part of your process, using it on a daily basis, if that's your role, and using it in a scalable and effective way. And then finally, with some remaining questions, with remaining time, we'd love to be able to answer some questions on the fly. All right.
Hey, and you know what? I'm going to throw you one right now, Adam. Somebody asked, is threat intelligence the same as proactive threat protection?
Okay. Yeah. So if you're referring to the feature in the Symantec Endpoint Protection product, there's a feature, known as proactive threat protection. So this is a bit different in that what we're talking about for the threat intelligence, it is used on the back end of our products, on our endpoint products, meaning, Symantec Endpoint Protection or email security.cloud or email scanners, network appliances use this threat intelligence to make decisions on the fly about, what to block, what not to block. So there is a little bit of, tie in there with something like proactive threat protection. But what we're talking about in this webinar is you getting direct access to that intelligence. And so it's basically, instead of just our products using that intelligence, our agents, our, servers, scanners, et cetera, is you being able to get direct access to that intelligence. So that's where it's a bit different.
Hey, I think that's a great answer. And you're going to show some really good examples of how you get access to actually our intelligence, which I think is pretty incredible. So there's your next slide.
All right. Yep. So in Endpoint Security Complete, which is our flagship endpoint product, we're now including two different forms of threat intelligence. The first one is direct access to our global intelligence network using an API. And this is really useful for enriching any indicators that you may be seeing within your environment. So indicators could be referring to file hashes, network IP addresses, network domains, things like that. And enrichment is helpful because for any number of reasons, you may be looking at any of these particular indicators. So for instance, let's say that, some technology, it doesn't even have to be SEP. It could be a non-semantic technology, flagged some file, right, as suspicious. Or maybe you came across this file as part of your investigation and you don't know enough about it. You don't know what it means, right? And maybe, as the first step, you're looking at virus total and you're like, hey, what does virus total know about this? And then, virus total may come back and say, we've never seen this before, right? No one submitted it. So it's like, well, what do you do next, right? And so that's what we call enrichment, which is where you're taking these indicators and you're layering on information from threat intelligence to give you some additional details and context about what does this file mean? What does it mean that it's in your environment? Does it mean anything? Maybe it's just some random in-house application that someone developed, right? Or is it on the extreme side where it's, maybe you work in the energy industry, right? And maybe this file is associated with some threat actor that's going after the energy industry. And so that context is going to really change the way you do your investigation.
So you're doing your investigation, and you're saying this is real time. I mean, what
Exactly.
does that mean?
So real time means that you're not, let's say, looking at blogs from 12 months ago, saying, hey, here's a list of hashes, right, that were associated with a particular campaign, right? Right. So in this case, real time means that you actually looked up this hash in our global intelligence network, which is constantly being updated every single second, right? With data coming in from our products, it's coming in from relationships we have with like the Cyber Threat Alliance and Virus Total and all these other outside sources, all contribute to our global intelligence network. And so when you ask it a question like, hey, what do you know about this file? We're giving you real-time snapshot of information as opposed to, like I said, searching a report from like a year ago.
Hey, that's really my beef with threat intelligence, the feeds, that they're historical data. And so there's a lot to learn from history, and we do, and watching trends and what's happening, but it's not real time. And so you're not seeing what does it look like now. And that has been a feature. I mean, it's been an ability of ours since we built this. God, I'm going to go back, but 10 years ago, but we're opening this up to everybody else. So I think that's pretty cool. One of the questions we're getting is, will Symantec ever provide an interface for accessing this threat intelligence? And this is it. And we're jumping ahead a little. So trust us, we're going to show you this. We're going to show you the interface, so you'll see that information. But I just wanted to jump in there and talk about how significant I think the real time is. Let me go back to your slide so you can finish up.
Yeah. No,
I tried to jump in again though.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it is super cool because honestly, when we get into like the examples, right? Like I'll show you some API examples. On the surface, it's going to look really simple. And you're like, really? Is that it? You just ask about this file and you get this information back. But in reality, like you said, the sophistication of the global intelligence network as to where it's getting its data from, how it's being updated in real time every single second with millions and millions of these indicators. You don't really see, we kind of abstracted all of that sophisticated machinery and complexity, right? All the machine learning and the threat intel that goes into this, you don't really see that. But what you are seeing is the output of that, right, through these queries. And ever since I've been at Symantec, which is going on 7.5 years now, I've always had our customers ask like, "Hey, you guys talk a lot about your global intelligence network, how awesome it is. How do we use it?" Right? And up until a couple months ago, we said, "Oh, well, if you use any of our products, you're technically using it. You're indirectly using it." And it's really just in the last month or two this is the first time we've actually opened it up so you can query it directly and ask any question you want.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of exposing the secret sauce, right? That's kind of how I thought about it. And in the end of the day, it's not really a secret because we use this in the products. It's very, and if other people can get use out of it, I mean, and I think they really can. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to show everybody that. We're just so excited. Okay, so
just a little,
yeah. Okay, let me let you finish the slide. I promise I'll let you finish.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Right. No, I'll get to the second bullet point soon. I promise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this intelligence, and you'll see in some of the examples, right? The context is really critical here. You really need to be able to distinguish, some, maybe a malicious browser plugin that's actually really just, malvertisement. Versus an attack targeting the energy sector, healthcare sector, financial sector, or whatever industry you're in, right? And then as I mentioned before, the integration is key here, right? It's one thing to have access to raw information, but in order to scale that up and operationalize it, so you can do this many times over, especially in an automated manner, is where integration with other platforms is really important. And the thing about related IOCs is this is where it helps help you pivot your investigation, because you may find something of interest. Let's say there's a really interesting file, and that may not be the end of your investigation. Usually, if you're looking at a potential attack or potential breach, a lot of times it doesn't just end with one file, right? A lot of these attacks have gotten more sophisticated. A lot of multi-stage payloads and things like that going on, and you're going to be able to see what are some other things that you should be hunting for in your environment based on what you found. And this is something our own threat hunter team, does every single day, every minute, is when they're finding some of the suspicious activity or even known malicious activity. They're also looking at these related indicators using basically the same data set and looking to see like, hey, what else should we be looking for, right? And that helps really accelerate your investigation. So that's a little bit on the API. The second piece, or the second form of threat intel we have is what we call strategic intelligence. And this is a bit more curated. And so rather than, so this isn't like an API where you're asking specific questions. These are more like a white paper type of format. And it's targeted to different geographies and different verticals. And we usually write them up around once a quarter or so. And so we have these papers that describe the threat landscape, recent campaigns, recent attacks targeting these different sectors, and everything covering from financial sector, healthcare, retail. I think we recently did one on supply chain attacks, which is really hot, right, with the SolarWinds attack. And so this really helps you think a little bit more strategically about how you should be preparing yourself.
So you're going to show an example of that.
Yeah. The last slide, we'll have kind of a little bit of an example there. These reports are emailed out to assess complete customers within those industries, so you get it directly, and I think it's in a PDF format.
Okay. I've got a comment on that, but
Sure,
I'm thinking
please.
I'll wait till we get to the slide.
Okay.
If I forget, remind me. Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I'm going to write it on my hand.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
And then I'll hold it up to the screen.
Let's get to some of the specifics.
Yeah.
This point. Taking a little bit there. Oh, there we go. So
yes.
Threat Intelligence API. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is pretty straightforward, honestly, right? And it's the best way to think about it is you're asking a question. And that question is, what do you know about X? You meaning Symantec and X meaning an indicator, whether it's a file, domain, or IP address. And the types of information that you can get back from a global intelligence network will tell you things such as, what's the reputation of this file or domain? Reputation meaning, kind of what's the general consensus? Is it bad? Is it malicious? Is it unknown? Is it kind of suspicious, right? But maybe not totally confident that that's really bad. Or sometimes even more importantly, that it's good, right? Sometimes you're going to run across these files or domains that maybe you've never heard of before. But then the global intelligence network is going to come back and tell you, actually, we have like 1,000 customers running it. Maybe it's just some obscure tool, right? Maybe it's industry specific, and it's nothing to be worried about, right? And so you don't have to go down, chasing something that doesn't really matter.
And this is a great example of things that have been in our product. These specifically in a reputation since we introduced that feature. I think it's incredibly powerful. I'm going to put the slide back up so you can see it. But the idea that you can see what the global prevalence of a file is, that you can see the first time it was seen and the last time it was seen. And man, if you're seeing something that's only on 5 machines and it's brand new, maybe it's an update. Maybe it's an update from SolarWinds, right? So that's a really powerful feature. We did get a question here on where does this show up in the product, and what part of helping detection and prevention in SES Complete is this part of? I think it's clearly, if you look at that screen, I think it's in the detection area of understanding what unknown file is. I don't know if you have any other observations on that as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we generally put it, so we have an Endpoint Security Complete. We have like these 4 pillars of features, right? And they're generally kind of mapped back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so, we put this more closely to at the end there, which is where you're doing investigations, possibly some response actions, something that's not necessarily being blocked up front. Maybe it's not like commodity malware, but it's more closely associated with your EDR tool set and your security operations center work.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, great. Let me get you back on that slide. The other one, you'll get to it, but I'm jumping ahead because I'm over anxious. The bottom one, the threat actors. I think that's kind of cool. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, we just added this a few days ago, actually, in the API. So this is fresh off the press. We're in the middle of updating our documentation. It's so new. But yeah, so in addition, right, to the information that you may get back about a file or domain, about is it good, is it bad, where have we seen it, what industries, et cetera. The threat actor is really critical because if this particular indicator has been associated with a known, campaign, right? So, campaign may be something like Wasted Locker, right? Where there's a targeted ransomware attack. Getting the threat actor information is really going to tell you 2 things. One is, I would say, watch out, because generally, this is not like, run of the mill, browser, plug-in coupon cutter type of maliciousness. This is something like, hey, these guys may be trying to, encrypt all your data, right, and not give you the key, or these guys are trying to exfiltrate out information or something like that. But the other thing it's going to tell you is, something a little bit about that campaign, right? And so, with Symantec, we put out a lot of publications about different campaigns and actors that we track. Other vendors and other threat intel sources also do a lot of really good write-ups on these different, campaigns and actors. And that gives you a really quick way of figuring out the context and saying, hey, is this part of some other campaign? And if so, what other indicators should you be looking at? Or maybe even answer the question of, should you be working with law enforcement, right? Depending on who that actor is.
Right. I love the fact that you can get the industry information and geographic information. And definitely, you should not use it as to say, well, I'm not in that industry, so I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it does allow you to draw some conclusions and maybe make some assumptions about the nature of the threat, right? Which I think, again, things we've used, but now you can use them are really powerful.
Definitely.
Okay, so anything else you want to say on that slide, or should I go on to that?
Yeah, a couple of things I want to call out specifically.
Okay.
They kind of slide in a little bit as just like more bullet points, but in fact are actually, I think, really unique to the threat intel we're providing. And that's specifically the process lineage and the related indicators as well. And so the related indicators, this is where if you say, hey, Symantec, what do you know about this file? You'll get back that information that you're seeing on the right side here. That's a sample, right? Countries, industries, is it bad, is it good, etc. But if we know of other files or even domains as to, hey, where did this file come from? Or has it created other files, right? And like I said, a lot of these attacks have become more sophisticated, and they have these multi-stage payloads, etc. A lot of times we're associating files either through our own threat hunting analysis or in an automated fashion through our own engines, right? So even if you take SEP or endpoint security as an example, our agent is tracking, the process lineage for what process is spawning what, on a machine, what network connections is that process making, et cetera. And so we have a lot of these associations. And so where this is useful is when you ask that question, hey, what do you know about this file? And if you have that file in your environment and we say, hey, actually, this is kind of a bad file, here's 6 other files it's associated with, and here's 2 other domains associated with it as to where it could have come from, that's going to give you some critical clues, because now you can start maybe checking like your proxy logs, checking your EDR logs to see, doing a search and say, hey, have we seen these other files? Have we seen these other domains, right? And
Right.
as opposed to just seeing that one file in a vacuum.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Hey, at this point, we're going to show some more details on that. I thought we'll throw in another poll, though, if that's okay. All right, here I go. So I'm going to start another poll. This one is, what's the biggest shortcoming of the threat intelligence that you're using now? We've given you some clues of what you might want to answer, I think, if you look at what we've shown. Answer honestly, we're very kind of interested in what you want to see improve, what you want to see that's better with threat intelligence, and hopefully we'll hit the mark with some of those, and then know where we need to move going forward. So I believe the poll's live. If you want to give an answer, that would be great. We're just going to run it for a few more seconds, and then we'll just move on. Or maybe people don't really want to talk about their own intelligence system.
Well, I mean, looking at the poll, I'll mention something that I think is somewhat common, which actually is the first response we just came in. I was about to say is we don't use any threat intel. I think that's probably common for a couple of reasons. One is yes, it is a little bit more of a sophisticated use case, right? It kind of goes along with that whole process of threat hunting, which requires certain tool sets and skill sets, knowledge that not every organization has ramped up yet on. But the other reason why is, generally speaking, threat intelligence is sold separately, meaning you're going to have to budget for it and get the tools and get the skill sets, and then like I said, you have to budget for it, and then a lot of organizations may have more than one source of multiple threat intelligence, right? And then you have to evaluate, which one is providing the most value, et cetera. And that's a big thing. I was going to save it for the end of the presentation, but whatever. Is that we don't sell this separately. It's actually part of Endpoint Security Complete, and so we want more people to take advantage of valuable threat intel like this and remove some of those barriers.
Yeah, it's a good thing this isn't a mystery because we've revealed the ending a couple times now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I said I was going to sell you in 10 minutes. Now it's 25 minutes, but yeah, close enough.
Yeah, and I think evaluating a threat intelligence feed has got to be really, really difficult.
It is, yeah. And there's whole webinars being done on it. We did one with Jake Williams at SANS actually, and it talks about how do you measure the value of a threat intelligence feed, and the short answer is it's difficult. It really is difficult. Yeah.
Well, if you want the long answer, we've got a link to that webinar actually in the resources section. So anybody that wants to move on there, or no, don't leave now, but at your leisure. Okay.
You have one webinar in the left ear and another webinar in the right ear.
Right. Okay, so I think this is really interesting because the difference between a real-time enrichment versus IOC feed, and I think that's really important. So can you spend a minute on this slide and kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, definitely. And first, I have to promise everyone we're not manipulating the poll answers, because currently the number one answer, at least leading right now by 42%. Is one of the biggest shortcomings is that threat intelligence is not real time, right? and now we're talking specifically about how this is real time versus a feed, which may not be real time.
Well, so I did have my mom join the webinar, and I asked her to vote that way on the poll.
Well, that's great timing then. Thanks, Kevin's mom. So. So, you mentioned earlier, right, the way you access this threat intel, at least through Endpoint Security Complete, is via API. And so because of that, every answer you get back is real-time information you're getting back from our global intelligence network. And so that also means, too, later on when we talk a little bit about the process and how you scale this, is that the process in the way that you use this information may be different than the way you use a feed. And I'll give you an example. So with a feed approach, you may take, we're going to make up a number here. Let's say you have like 1 million hashes or something, right? And you may take that list of 1 million hashes and see, you can't see me on camera right now. I'm making like really big gestures.
Hang on, I'll let them see you. I can do that.
Yeah, like all 1 million hashes. Yeah.
1 million hashes. Got it. Not this many, but that many.
Yeah, at least, yeah. And correlating that 1 million list of hashes back to your environment and say, hey, have you ever seen any of these hashes hit, right? And honestly, our products are kind of doing that for you, right? At least in regards to the global intelligence network. When we see a file hash, especially if it's executable, our agent's already doing that lookup for you, right? So you don't need to at least take our list and try to pump it into your environment. We're doing that for you. But feed-based approach is a little bit more helpful if you're doing that process. Enrichment, if you want to go back to the slide.
Oh, sure.
I'm done with my wild gestures. Yeah.
Well, that's disappointing.
For now.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. And so, with an enrichment approach, this is more about something that you may have already observed in your environment. And like I said, it doesn't have to even come from the endpoint, right? This could be something you saw on the network side. Maybe you saw it come in through email. Or something you saw on the endpoint side that was either flagged or not flagged or whatever. But generally, this works better if it's something you've already observed in your environment. And when you do that lookup, you say, "Hey, we saw this file. What do you know about it?" Right? That's when we pull out all this other information. And so you're not trying to synchronize, a feed like every 24 hours or 36 hours, down, and then try and do that correlation. This is all basically done on the fly with an enrichment approach.
Okay. Yeah. Correlation is another one of those kind of dirty words. Everybody says they're going to solve it, but I'm still waiting. So the fact that you don't have to with this is, I think, is pretty significant.
Yep. All right. Yeah, we can.
All right. Sorry, I'm throwing you off now.
No, this is good. Actually, sorry. Before we move forward, so the example we see on the right side there. This is a real example. I copy and pasted it out. I use Postman for my API testing. And this is an example of process lineage. I mentioned earlier is potential data you can get back about a file. And the reason why this is a little bit special or a little bit interesting is that usually when people talk about process lineage in the context of endpoint, usually they're referring to a process executed in your environment, and your EDR software monitored what that process did, and it will show you how that process was started and did it start any other processes. And usually this information is very critical to an investigation, and it kind of helps you see the origin, like how did this thing get started? What called it? Did it start from Microsoft Office? Because that could tell you maybe it started from a malicious document. You should check your email logs or something. And then if it launched something else on that endpoint, you can then go look at those files that it may have created or launched. But this process lineage coming from the Threat Intel API isn't necessarily specific to your organization, to your environment. If we saw this process launch in some other customer's environment, that information is used in how we track the associations of file to file. And this is something you have access to. So in that example where you found something kind of suspicious in your environment, and you go query our API and say, hey, what do you know about this? If we have the process lineage on it, you can look at this and you say, oh, wow, this maybe was started by services, .exe. So maybe we should look for a Windows service that was maliciously added to the machine. Or maybe this process launched some other file, and then you can do an evidence of compromise search using our software or whatever, and look to see, hey, have we seen this other file in our environment? So this is really great to help kind of pivot your investigation and keep it moving along.
And does it come with those nice green circles around?
If you have a license to Microsoft PowerPoint, you can make the green circles just as well.
Wow, I think everybody has PowerPoint. That's great.
I bet Open Office and some of the others could do that too. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
MS Paint. Yeah.
So let's take a real world example.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this is great. And so, I went through, one of our blogs. Actually, I have a link there in the bottom there. We did some incredible research on the SolarWinds attack and Sunburst. A lot of really good original research published on our blogs there. And so he took one of those hashes and said, hey, if I were using the API and I saw, maybe before, this was widely known, right? What information would I get back on that? And so you can see that this file is obviously bad. What's interesting is look at that first seen date, right? So that's going back to, for this particular file, it's going back to June 2020. And, if you've kept up with some of the media reports or research that Symantec did on this, you'll know that the SolarWinds attack definitely did not start in December, right? It goes back way further than that. And you can actually see that evidence now, right, as part of the threat intel. You can also see a lot of it was based in the US, at least for this particular sample.
It's a frightening piece of information, right?
It is. You look at that time gap of December going back to June is like, what was this thing doing for 6 months?
Right. But how important to know that, right?
Exactly.
And you don't have to read a newspaper report to try to figure out that data is there for you.
Yep. In real time.
Right? And that's globally, not just your organization.
Yeah, and that's a key point, Kevin, too. A lot of the intel that you're deriving, at least from endpoint products, email products, etc. A lot of it's really like kind of local to your own environment, and so you certainly get some information that way. But being able to see, hey, have any other organizations seen this file, is quickly going to tell you if you're special or not. And usually, being special is a bad thing.
It's not good. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Let me take it back. There we go.
Yep. And another common question we get too is, for a particular file or even domain, is, hey, am I protected against this? Meaning, if one of my other users encountered this file or went to this URL, would SEP or would SES complete block it? Right. And so that's what you're seeing in the lower left-hand screenshot there, is we'll actually tell you if a particular endpoint engine, whether it's behavior-based, machine learning-based, or whatever, is going to detect this particular sample. And then if so, how far back, right, does that protection go? So that's on the left side.
We actually have a question that's a little bit pertinent to this. It's saying, this is an example, or we've seen some examples of unknown files. And what about, known files? This is, in this particular case, a known file. And what about the notification mechanisms that this was proactively identified? This is, you are going to get, since this is telling you antivirus caught it, so there's a notification there, right? If it was reputation, this is really for exploring what does this mean? How can I get the data on what this means, this file that was detected in this case? That sound right to you?
Yeah, that's right. So, generally speaking, if you're using Symantec Endpoint and you see something where the threat intel is coming back and saying, okay, the reputation for this is is bad, and or here's the protection technology and engine that caught it. Generally, you would expect to see basically an event or a log from the product, right? That's either in the console or it's going to your SIM or whatever. The stuff where, or the situations where you may not be seeing that event or notification directly from the product is where if you're looking at, let's say, like a file or domain, and it's not actually flagged as malicious, it's flagged as something else. It's flagged as either like good, or maybe it's like somewhere like in between. And that's where you may need to dig a level deeper and look at, maybe, let's say, like your EDR telemetry, or maybe look at some other logs that may not even be endpoint logs to see, hey, have we observed this particular file or indicator in our environment?
Got it. Yep. Thanks. Great answer. You ready for example number 2?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep. So earlier, I talked about some of the value of process lineage. So this is a specific example we picked up, and you can see on the right side here that this process was was actually launched by services. If you go all the way up to the stack, it's win in it, and then services. And so this is useful context because now that something may have actually added a Windows service to that machine, right? And I believe there's even a specific MITRE technique associated with that behavior. And so if you were using our EDR features, you could go in and say, hey, show me show me any service creations, right, that may have involved this particular file. And that gives you something else to go off of, something that's a little bit more detailed as to what to look for, as opposed to just looking for some random file hash.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to move on to using semantic threat intel. So it's an API. Anybody can use the API. They can write anything they want to the API. More than that, though, right?
Yeah. So I hit the punchline earlier, which is surprise. We're not selling this separately. It's part of Endpoint Security Complete, which is super cool. So if you have Endpoint Security Complete, basically all you need to do to get access to this is log into your console. It does not matter. A common question we get is, hey, do I have to be cloud managed, right, to get access to this? The answer is no. If you have Endpoint Security Complete, you have basically access to like almost all of our endpoint stuff, whether you're on-prem or cloud. It's just the API key itself we put in the cloud console. But you can still keep all your stuff on-prem if you want to. You just need the API key out of the cloud console.
Okay, got it. And let's go ahead. I'll put it back up. I know you've got some more on there.
Yep. So that's how you kind of get like the initial access to it, right? Now, how do you use it on, let's say, like a day-to-day basis, right? Chances are you may not be, just doing manual queries in Postman all day long, or manual queries through a, command line like curl or something all day long. And so this really depends on, if you have any kind of existing threat intel program, there's a good chance you may already have a process around this. or even a specific tool set. And so there's a handful of threat intelligence platforms and SOARs out there. And there's actually a bunch of them that we're partnering with. A few of them as examples is Threat Quotient, Anomaly, and Simplify. These products already have a lot of these built-in workflows and processes around how to best use threat intelligence. Sometimes it's just to triage alerts coming in from your EDR or other software. In other situations, that threat intel is used not just for triaging, but also doing a full-on investigation, right, and doing a little bit of case management and figuring out was there full-on breach, who's behind it, or is it just a false alarm? And so we've partnered with some of these threat intelligence platform vendors to basically make the integration super easy, right? So the idea is we log into your console, our console, you grab the API key, you put it into your threat intelligence platform, and then kind of magically you now have access to our global intelligence network as part of that process.
It is magic. Can you confirm that?
It's pretty close. I mean,
okay.
there's that phrase about magic is just science we don't understand yet. So there's that too. So maybe in a month from now we'll say actually it was just some really good development work by our partners.
Right. Okay. So I know a number of folks are not using threat intelligence feeds of any type. Yeah. For those that do, I'm going to throw up another poll question if you could answer that. And while people are answering that, and just a reminder, there is in the tabs, there is a vote. That's where the poll is. Adam, so say you're not going to go the integration route. You want to write something yourself. How do you figure out how to do that?
Yeah, good question. So we have a link. I have a link to that slide, which I think the copy of the slides will be made available. Our API documentation is public. You don't even need to log in. It's apidocs.securitycloud.symantec.com. A little bit of a mouthful, but we have a link on the slide. And you can check out, even if you don't have SES Complete, you can actually go in and check out, see exactly how the API works. And so we have some examples in there. And you're right. If you want to do some of your own scripting or development work, it's honestly, it's a super simple, kind of straightforward API to use. We also, I think by the end of this week, so today or tomorrow, we'll be putting some additional script examples, like Python scripts and stuff, up on our GitHub repository, github.com/Symantec. And that'll have some code snippets if you want to get started and do your own API calls for integration.
Okay, great. So I think the poll has confirmed what everyone knows is that everyone uses Splunk. So we probably didn't even need to ask.
Yeah, we have a strong relationship with Splunk. I don't have that logo on that particular slide, but there's more to come there.
Okay, yeah. Since everybody's using it, you'd have to.
Exactly.
So we had a couple questions about CVEs. Is there any linkage in the API to CVEs?
That's a good question. So offhand, and maybe you know more than me, Kevin, is I can think of some examples of where if it was let's say a network-based threat, or even file-based. Let me back up. So the file-based one, a lot of times when vulnerabilities get announced, someone somewhere has written some exploit code, right? Some sample exploits. And a lot of times we'll create content to detect that sample exploit code. And so if you go to look up a file hash and it's associated with exploit code, with a known exploit code, it'll usually have I think it's exp dot and then the CVE number associated with the AV detection. Right. We do something similar except with IPS on the network side. So if there's a vulnerability that's more network based, we have amazing coverage from our IPS engine to block the network layer before it gets actually into memory or on disk on the endpoint. And sometimes we'll have the CVE identifier directly in the threat name, or basically the signature ID.
Absolutely, right. And let me throw in my factoid of the day. 70% of our detections in 2020, we went and looked, and 70% of them were done by IPS. So it's a pretty good technology for protection and stopping threats from getting on the machine. You know, we're almost out of time. We went to 45 minutes. Is there, maybe we could talk real quickly on, we promised we'd talk about the strategic threat intelligence. Let me ask you my question or make the statement. I mean, everybody and his brother is putting out like general reports these days. We actually, you know, don't do those anymore. Yep. So I think we decided, so let me say, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, we decided that it was really more important not to cover the, you know, there are this many threats in the world or whatever, is to kind of try to focus on what we were writing about and sharing with customers that were very specific to their industries, what they're doing and their needs. And to me, in a nutshell, that's what the strategic threat intelligence is all about. Is that your take on it, or you want to expand on that?
What if I said no? No, I'm kidding.
You know, I deal with the disappointment. Don't worry about it.
No, you're absolutely right, as usual. Another way I see it too is that this is a little bit more actionable. You know, that's also a common question we get, especially with like the more higher level you go with information, especially when it comes to like threat intelligence. The question always comes back is this actionable, right? Is this just going to be some trivia answer 5 years from now in Jeopardy? Or is this something I can actually do about, right, as part of my planning and improving our security posture? And I think that knowing about the campaigns and the type of attacks that are going on specific to your industry or, you know, vertical, is something that you can actually do something about and not just kind of sit back and like, oh, that's interesting.
You know that one of the data points we came up with an ISTR several years ago became a Jeopardy question.
Oh no, I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so you know we had a bit of fame and fortune out of that report. But again, it was great for getting on Jeopardy. But were people getting value and out of it beyond Jeopardy? And so we're really trying to focus on where we can get the most value for customers. I think we've got some questions. We can try to get into those. Is there any other kind of wrap up statements you want to make at this point? Do we miss anything? Did I rush you through anything?
No, I didn't feel rushed at all. I felt very relaxed and comfortable.
All right, great.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a chance to emphasize this because the question is, will this be made available for Symantec Endpoint Protection enterprise customers?
Okay. Yeah. Right now, it is reserved for Endpoint Security Complete. But it's fairly trivial. You know, if you want to upgrade, you know, from Enterprise to Complete, it's pretty easy to do. But yeah, right now this is the Endpoint Security Complete feature.
Yeah. There's a lot of great value in Complete. Yep. We're not here to sell you on that, but that other value. But this one, yeah, it's part of the Complete. Let's see. What else do we have? There's a couple questions I want to let people know that I will follow up, or Adam will follow up with an email to answer. They're not necessarily pertinent to the conversation or then meet into the flow, so I kind of skipped over them. But we'll get to them. Sorry about that. I also have some more housekeeping I have to do, and maybe in the interest of time, I think we got most of the questions that were related specifically to what we're talking about. If I missed any, again, apologies, but we'll get them. So let's maybe I should wrap up. So I got a little piece of paper here so I don't screw this up. So I'm going to read this. First of all, I don't have to read this. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Before you sign off, if you still have questions, put them in there. Again, we'll get to them. Rate us. Again, tell us what we need to do better. And then now the part I got to read. Our next webinar is in the Endpoint Security series. It's an ongoing series. It's going to be in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. We're always doing them on Thursdays. That's April 29th for those without a calendar. And this one is called, Is Mobile a Weak Link in Your Endpoint Protection? That sounds pretty good. I don't think you should miss it. We don't spend enough time on mobile. there's enough going on endpoints or the the PC endpoints, but there's been some really crazy stuff going on in mobile and really significant. So I think that'll be a good one. So don't miss it. And there's a link below to sign up for that in the attachment tab, as well as a number of the resources that we talked about during the webinar today. Again, thanks everybody for showing up. We're looking forward to doing more of these. Adam, you got any last words you want to share?
No, yeah, thanks for joining. Hopefully it was helpful, and don't forget to rate it so we either do it again or don't do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. You're asking for trouble, my friend.
Oh, I know.
Okay. All right. I'm going to end it there. Thanks so much. Thanks a bunch, everybody. All right.